Hello students, today we're going to study the cell cycle and mitosis. This is one of my favorite parts of biology, and we're going to look at how a cell divides and reproduces. Make sure your note sheet is out in front of you and that you're taking down a few notes as you go and labeling diagrams. So let's start with what is cell division or cell reproduction. So cell division, the type of cell division that we're going to talk about today, mitosis, is when a cell divides into two different daughter cells. These cells are your body cells, and most of your body cells do this cell division. There are some body cells that are quite larger than other cells, like neurons, that actually don't divide in this way. You can build new neural connections as you go through life, but the cells aren't actually actively dividing. So cell division starts with chromosomes. Chromosomes are structures that the DNA in your cells actually form into in order to get ready to divide. You will not see individual chromosomes in a cell's nucleus until just before the cell enters mitosis or the cell begins cell division. So what that looks like is normally the DNA is arranged in just kind of bundles that are loosely woven together in the nucleus. As the cell begins to get ready to divide, these structures organize themselves and coil up into these chromosomes. So only when the DNA is in chromosome form is it visible in the cell. A couple other things. So chromosomes are a way to organize the DNA. This is so important to biology and to genetics because if the DNA was not organized, there might be problems in the replication of it and passing it on and making it a genetically identical cell. Remember, body cells don't want errors in this passing on of DNA so that they don't mutate or they don't have problems. There's some interesting facts about chromosomes. Chromosomes differ depending upon the organism. So for example, humans have 46 chromosomes, and we'll be working with the organism of the human body, quite a bit. Chickens have 78. So the question could be, does the organism type and its complexity actually result in more chromosomes? And the answer to that really is no. If you look here, the housefly has 12 chromosomes and a tomato plant has 24. So really, the more complex the organism, it doesn't really have a connection or a relationship to the amount of chromosomes. So the really important thing that we're going to study is the cell cycle, and this is the start of our genetics and heredity unit. So understanding the cell cycle means that you can understand what happens when things go wrong in the cell cycle. Cancer cells are an example of cells that do not follow the normal cell cycle process. So by learning this week, next week we're going to enter into a problem-based learning challenge that has to do with cancer cells. So the cell cycle consists of 3 stages. We're going to look at all of these stages. Interphase is the first stage, mitosis then is the second one, and then cytokinesis. We'll talk about specifically what happens in each of the parts of the cell cycle. So the part where the cell cycle stays in the longest should be no surprise. It's in interphase, which is the growth and development phase, where a cell is doing its normal cell functions, and it stays there for the longest part of its lifespan. So looking a little bit more into interphase, interphase is the stage that occurs when the cell isn't dividing. So it's the normal growth and development phase of the cell. So if you remember, the stage that follows interphase is mitosis. So mitosis is the process in cell division where the cell is actually going through division, it's replicating its chromosomes, and it's passing on an identical set to another cell. It is divided into 4 phases within this small yellow piece of the pie, or yellow phase. So the first phase is prophase, second metaphase, anaphase, and then telophase. If it helps, you can take the first letter of each of these phases and make PMAT if that helps you remember the order of these different phases in mitosis. The stage that follows mitosis, if you remember, is cytokinesis. And cytokinesis is where the cell actually divides. It's the smallest stage or the shortest stage. It takes the least amount of time in the cell cycle. So the cytoplasm, all the organelles, all the DNA, and that is housed in chromosomes actually go to a new cell, and the cell splits from one cell into two daughter cells. So the interesting part is there's a difference in cytokinesis between plant cells and animal cells. In plant cells, the cell wall, because they have a cell wall, a cell plate forms between the two daughter cells before the actual cytoplasm divides. So this is a little different than in animal cells that split off and the cell membrane actually splits into two. Okay, the stage that follows cytokinesis, it's not a trick question. The cell would then go back and enter interphase. So the cell cycle is just that. It's a cycle. So when the cell isn't in mitosis, then it goes to cytokinesis, and then cytokinesis back to interphase, and the cell cycle starts again. So take a few minutes with this diagram. This is the entire cell cycle. So we have interphase, then we have the 4 phases of mitosis in red, and then we have cytokinesis. So this is on the other sheet, the other note sheet. Please go ahead and label this so that you know what's going on in each of these phases. You also have these as part of the cell cycle. So after you fill in the cell cycle pictures on the other note sheet, then take a minute and see if you can tell what these phases are. They're not in any particular order, so see if by looking at the cells and the chromosome arrangement that you can actually pick out the different phases of the cell cycle and of mitosis. So the last thing, we are going to do an onion root tip lab in which you look at onion root cells under the microscope, and they're undergoing mitosis. So you will need to see or to be able to tell what phase the cells are in. So if you look at an example here, the nucleus is very clear. This one would be in interphase. Some of these are in late interphase. This guy is in prophase. And so you'll also look at metaphase and anaphase and telophase as well. But that's for another day. So please feel free to go back to any parts of this presentation that you missed. And if not, we will move you on to the next step of learning about the cell cycle and mitosis.